Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan anime review. This one is going to be my thoughts on Attack on Titan Season 4 Part 2 episodes 1 to 4. Now, I had been doing weekly reviews for the show, I think since about Season 2 or something like that. The main reason I didn't do individual reviews for episode 1, 2, and 3 is just that I was super busy throughout most of January, and this specific series, the Attack on Titan videos, just with when the episodes came out, were the videos that just were the ones that got lost in the middle of all that busyness. I have been watching the show weekly. I had even roughly recorded a video for the first episode, but then listening to it again, I didn't say a lot about the actual events of the first episode, and it was more just in general talking about Attack on Titan. So I sort of scrapped that one, maybe waited for the next one, and that's when I got like super busy. So yeah, we have to recap 4 episodes. And what's interesting about these ones is that obviously episode 3 and 4 are the really strong episodes. Not that the first 2 episodes were like bad or anything like that, but it was mainly set up, the early stages of this battle, the Marley counterattack, and just setting the stage for effectively the events of episode 3, and then I suppose the events of what, when we cut back to the battle, is the result of this paths situation and who gains control over what to do with the founding Titan power between Zeke and Eren. We're still going into more kind of backstory explanation in the next episode, episode 5. And they're definitely setting up that it looks like the brothers' battle for control is going to maybe switch again based on what happens there. So, yeah, like I said, the first 2 episodes were good. You could definitely tell that the animation company MAPPA had more time for this part of the season compared to part 1, in that even the CG Titans seem a massive improvement over how they looked in part 1. I still obviously would prefer it to be more like the way Wit did it, but you know, this is how we get the season of Attack on Titan without waiting years and years for it. The main thing to say with all of this, I think the main event probably from the first episode was just finding out what happened to Levi, in that he's effectively on death's door. I don't think he's dead, because I don't think he would have been, carried away by Hanji like that if she didn't think he was still alive. She lied to sort of protect him. Now, what is interesting about it is that he was seriously injured, and because of sort of where medical technology is here, and also because of his lineage as being an Ackerman, there's no sort of Armin-esque recovery, like we'll just make him a Titan shifter by beating one of the other Titan shifters, for him, as far as I'm aware. So these injuries, he just has to deal with them going forward. At the very least, it's confirmed, he's missing, I think, multiple fingers. He has some pretty serious damage to his face, might have lost an eye, stuff like that. So if Levi gets back into action, it's going to be at a fraction of where it was before. So that's a massive change for that character whenever he gets reintroduced, because they're definitely going to reintroduce him. I don't think we've come back to what's actually happening with Levi since the first episode, if I remember correctly. But that was just the main thing there. Obviously, without the context of episode 2, 3, and 4, stuff like Zeke just emerging perfectly fine was pretty crazy. And it was the first tease of the paths, that him revealing that effectively Ymir basically put his body back together. And then the episodes as we progress, I think episode 3 reveals that anytime a Titan shifter shifts or their body heals, it actually is Ymir in the paths sculpting it. But because the paths are sort of separated from time, it takes her years upon years to actually do that, even though it's kind of instantaneous in the kind of present day world. So a lot of that stuff was very interesting. the focus in the action in the earlier episodes was on like Eren versus Reiner, but I think they basically made it clear Reiner isn't really a match for Eren anymore. The time of them being equals or Eren being behind Reiner has long passed, and this is just Reiner sort of doing what he can. We also have like the Jaws Titan get involved here as well. We have Piek getting involved. She gets some fun moments with the sort of fake death scene. But effectively, the first two episodes felt like positioning Eren and Zeke to get close to each other, to meet again, to activate the power of the Founding Titan. They also slowly begin to set up the idea of, well, we know what Zeke's plan is now. The Eldian euthanasia plan, by using the power of the Founding Titan to make it so that Eldians can't have kids, thus at some stage in the future sort of wiping out Eldians, and I suppose in the meantime meaning that you effectively can't really switch the Titan powers around because you don't have sort of new recruits coming in to actually give the powers to, and that's a way to get rid of the Titan powers, but it involves wiping out the whole race. And the whole setup that has been probably the big talking point from part one and remains the talking point after these first 4 episodes, which is obviously Eren doesn't agree with this. He has obviously agreed to Zeke's plan to sort of satiate Zeke, to manipulate him, to gain control of it at some point coming up, probably in the next episode. What is his actual goal? By the end of episode 4, we sort of have a sense for like, okay, a lot of why he changed as a character is coming to play now. But we still don't really know what his idea is. And so the discussion in episode 1 and 2 of like Armin, Mikasa and so on discussing, I don't think Eren would actually go ahead with this goal. So I think we should go to save him, to at least try and find out what his actual motivations are. Why is he so heavily pushing us away when we're pretty certain he doesn't want to eliminate us like, Zeke basically does? So they roughly agree to help out in this situation, because again, we're in this kind of wild battle here where we have the Marleyans counterattacking Paradise Island. We have the military of Paradise Island, which is effectively like the Survey Corps, and then we have the Jaegerists as well. So there is 3 factions involved here, and so on. I suppose you almost could say like 4, because you have the sort of what Yelena and stuff like that, who are kind of sort of doing their own thing. They still ultimately agree with like Eren's kind of ideas, and they're saying they don't fully agree with Zeke and that sort of stuff. But it's a complicated battlefield that we have here. So we catch up with stuff like what's going on with Falco. So he's obviously been captured and so on. Gabi, where is she in the middle of all of this? And she comes into quite heavy importance much later on in these episodes. The anti-Titan cannon, I suppose, ends up being a pretty important plot point here. This sort of changes the battlefield. When Zeke re-enters the battlefield, this is the turning point, because at the end of episode 1, it seems like Marley is in complete control. The Beast Titan's arrival is what takes out a lot of the ships, which is giving Marley the advantage. But then they basically nearly kill Zeke again with the anti-Titan cannon, and he's on the ground. But he does the fake death thing that Piek did before, to feign as if he's dead, but Eren is aware that he's just like hiding in basically the remains of his Titan. And a lot of the Eren action is just kind of highlighting how sort of, in a way, like how much stamina he has. A lot of people kind of basically going like, why do you fight so hard? And it's like one of the longest sort of sequences of a Titan shifter being just heavily involved in action. even though like Eren has like the Warhammer at this point, like he can only use that like occasionally because it's such a crazy power. And he's just slowly making his way over. And by the end of episode 3, we get to this point where he's meters away from Zeke, and basically the idea is that the second that they touch, they can activate the powers, because them touching brings them into the paths, which basically gives them all the time in the world. But right before they're about to touch, Gabi, with the sort of civilian kind of, they explained this briefly, that like it's sort of an anti-Titan rifle type thing, so it's a pretty wild rifle. She fires it, and effectively like she decapitates Eren, so like his head is just flying. Now what ends up happening is that his head comes off and lands in Zeke's hand, and Zeke explains that like because it happened so quickly, you were actually still alive. Your head still had sort of blood flowing through it at the time that it landed in my hand, and so it counted that we touched. And so the founding Titan connects with the power of the royal blood, but because they're, I suppose, two separate people, it can actually be sort of used now. Which brings us into, I definitely think, the most interesting section of these 4 episodes, which is the whole paths and further exploration of the backstory. Now, it's not the backstory that I was sort of super waiting for, which is that I thought that they would go straight into the Ymir backstory to explain her, where the Titans came from. That looks to be next episode, which I am super excited for, so glad that I'm sort of catching up with the episodes now, so we can really focus on that anticipated major backstory next time out. But the end of episode 3 and the start of episode 4 is fascinating, because this is where the reveal of sort of the different motivations of the two characters comes out. It seems like initially Zeke is in control, so he wants to activate the powers, but then Eren reveals that, no, I have betrayed you. I don't agree with your plans whatsoever. I'll do my own thing. So he's like, Ymir, I want to activate the powers to do this. But he's ignored. So the twist happens again, where it seems like Zeke is in control because he's been in the paths a little bit longer. So he reveals that, well, I'm the one with the royal blood, so she'll only listen to me. She listens to the royal blood, not the founding Titan. So I'm actually in control of this situation, and it's revealed that Eren is the one who is actually chained up. Now, they immediately go quite hard on the idea of Ymir has no free will of her own. She is like forced to obey the will of the person with royal blood. So I think they're going to address that, because I think ultimately Eren is going to be the one who chooses what to do with the founding Titan powers, just because Zeke's plan is so extreme. There's no way that's actually going to happen. But I'm assuming Eren's plan is probably going to be even more extreme, and they'll really play with that. That he might, because he's all about freedom, if he convinces somehow Ymir that she can be free, she can make the choice to not just by default side with whoever has royal blood, and instead, I suppose choose just to use the power of the founding Titan for a different reason. That would be a kind of interesting kind of thematic moment. But before we get into doing anything with her, we do have to understand where she came from. So doing the backstory first with her makes sense. Doing the backstory with the brothers and Grisha also makes sense. So all of this is actually very well laid out here, because there was a lot they had to do in the paths. So they're doing it in the right order in my mind. So what happens here is that obviously Zeke is in control. Eren is the one chained up. Zeke brings Eren through basically the memories of their father, with the hope, well, effectively like Eren's memories, with the hope of showing him that what happened to me, what Grisha tried to do to me, he also did to you. He has brainwashed you to believe in his goals, and that's why you sort of follow him. I will show you by showing you your past that this is the way that it happens. Now, what ends up happening is that this completely backfires on Zeke because it's ultimately revealed that Eren knew this already. He has seen his father's past. He has seen the future. He knows the memories. He knows who he is, and he is an individual, and he is free. And this is what shocks Zeke. Like, the amount of shocked Zeke expressions throughout these flashback scenes are pretty crazy. And I like that surprisingly early in these memories, it's clear that that is the way it's going. That Zeke thinks like, this must convince you. Look at this scene. And Eren's just like, yes, I agree with you. You are completely right. Can we get on with this now? And Zeke's just like, you don't mean that. So he knows he hasn't convinced him, but it just highlights like this is sort of in a way boring to Eren. He's just waiting to get to certain specific moments. And it's actually Zeke who has the big awakening in these moments, the big character arc of he feels his father never actually cared about him and only wanted to use him as a tool. But he's realizing through the way he handled Eren that he specifically didn't do that. He learned from his mistakes to not force his ideals onto Eren, and that Eren actually did grow up free and to have his own ideals, and that Zeke is super shocked to see, how much Eren cares about freedom, with the whole him killing people to save Mikasa, and especially like adult Eren's kind of explanation for that, which is that if people try to take my freedom, I will take their freedom away from them first, and that is fundamentally at its core who Eren is. He is incredibly shocked by this, and then Zeke starts to feel sympathy in a way for his father, because he sees that he actually did in the end feel sorry for what happened with Zeke. He like apologizes. He still looks at the picture of Zeke occasionally that was down in the basement, and he realizes, oh, he didn't do this. But then he's like, but wait, he still takes out the royal family. He slaughters them. That's the thing that we've known about for quite a while now. That highlights that he still fundamentally had his mission, his goal in mind. And this gets us to the, I suppose, big sort of shocking surprise moment of this episode. They build up to this by highlighting that it seems like through the paths and the combination of people and who has what powers here, that there is some sense that Grisha is able to see Zeke. Grisha is able to sort of see Eren. They're able to see him and kind of interact with him to a certain degree. It doesn't seem like it's the most clearest connection, but there's some way to make this connection happen. Through Grisha, we do get the, I suppose, proper explanation that, yes, the Attack Titan can, in fact, see the future. And this is a surprise to even Frida in the past, who wasn't aware that this was something that happens. Zeke didn't know about this either. And so this is Eren's real sort of like, this is why this didn't work. Bringing me through the past didn't work because I've experienced this. This is what has informed my actions up to now, is having seen this already. So Zeke, you are the one who's being influenced by this. And I like that the twist is so big that it's kind of like, Zeke, do you not realize that you are the one who still continues to be influenced by your father? Yes, it's in your effort to sort of oppose him, but you are the one who is constantly, everything you do somehow relates to your father, which is different than me. Now, the big thing that happens is that we get to that moment, he's talking to Frida, trying to convince her that, like, the people the Titans are killing, the Eldians, they don't know what they did that's wrong. For multiple reasons. One, it was so long in the past. Two, they don't have those memories because you literally took away those memories from them. So there's no possible way they can actually know anything about what they actually did was wrong. So they are kind of completely in the clear. But the will of the king, I suppose, takes over, and it's just like, no, the Eldians need to make amends for their sins, And I like that, like, Eren has been relatively composed for, like, the entire episode. But what suddenly turns Eren into the kind of fury that we've seen in the past is hearing this from Frida. Hearing this, Eldians are the devils type thing. They need to address their sins. This is what infuriates him. And it's again something that doubles down on this is why he doesn't agree with Zeke's plan. And so Zeke is shocked because we get to the point where the fight is about to happen. But Grisha actually makes the decision to not turn into a Titan. He can't bring himself to do what he has to do here because it would involve killing children. And Zeke is incredibly shocked by this because he realizes his father has changed. But then he knows that, but this happens. He does kill. How does this happen? And this is when sort of the big reveal of the episode happens. Eren, who up until now, obviously we've had teases that there's some sort of interaction going on, but now very clearly just goes up to his father, kind of puts his arm around his shoulders, speaks into his ear, and just is like, think about all the people who died, what they did, your previous wife, friends. Think about Eldia. This is your chance to do it. You know what you need to do. You need to go forward and act and do this. And so the major reveal here is that the sort of inciting moment in terms of the sort of like the Titans, the founding Titan, which obviously the main plot point in a way, ending up where it ends up, has always been informed by something Eren would do in the future. That Grisha was about to not do this, but then he only does it because he's convinced by the future Eren to actually go ahead with this. And it makes sense because the Attack Titan can see the future. So it's an interesting plot point in that, like, it is consistent, but it is also the show officially revealing that it actually has sort of time travel-y mechanics, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. A lot is going to depend on how heavy or not they use them, the extent to which they allow this to, in a way, sort of take over the plot, because Attack on Titan has worked in a way because they haven't gone into a lot of technical detail on sort of how its magic sort of power system works. And that's why, like, the next episode is obviously going to be quite interesting in terms of, do they properly explain what the origin of Titans actually is in terms of how Ymir gets her powers, and how they then break up into the 7 different Titans and so on. That's going to be very interesting to see. But this paths dynamic specifically, and what they did at the end of season 3 with Kruger knows about Mikasa and Armin, like, how? Because I don't mind the idea that the Attack Titan has, like, some vague sense of the future, because it is the Titan that is sort of the free Titan that can oppose. It's in a way like the opposite of the founding Titan, because the founding Titan is like locked down by its own ancestry. The Attack Titan is sort of almost like freer and opened up by that. But then they're also kind of almost what seems to be creating the idea that it's like the exact opposite of, like, whereas like in a way like one of the earlier founding Titans has locked down the ability for the founding Titan to do anything. It seems like every Attack Titan is at the will, in a way, of the furthest Attack Titan in the future, because they can see the future and be influenced by them. So that's a kind of very interesting dynamic. I don't know how much they're going to go into it. And that's the interesting thing here, is that I find what happened in this episode absolutely fascinating and super interesting, but I also have my doubts that, like, is this what Attack on Titan needs at this point? I guess next episode will explain a lot in terms of the backstory, and I suppose potentially resolving who out of Zeke and Eren actually gains control in this situation. Just because, like, we didn't really address Ymir much in this one. We're going to in the next one. But yeah, just really, really fascinating stuff. At the end of the episode, we see obviously the sort of the mental state that Grisha is in or around the time that he injects Eren, that he's so broken in a way by what's happened. He actually tells Zeke through the paths to stop Eren because he, through his having the Attack Titan, sees the future and sees absolute terror based on what Eren is going to do. So the rumbling is obviously the thing that is the plot point that's been addressed, and that, like, here's this thing you can do with the Founding Titan power. Let's not talk about it for a while. I guess Eren wants to do the rumbling, which I guess would make sense because it's meant to protect the island, which is, I guess, the people he cares about. That, like, his plan is, I suppose, like the opposite of Zeke's, I suppose, almost would be my guess. That while Zeke wants to bring sort of the world back into line by getting rid of all Eldians and making this sort of sacrifice of his people, Eren, I think, wants to protect all Eldians, but at the expense of other people. Because one of the things he says at the end of season 3, which is like the first main change in the character to being more like he is currently in season 4, is everyone else is happy about discovering the ocean and that there's more of the world. They're only on one island. The rest of the world is massive. Eren interprets that as everyone else out there is our enemies, because he knows the way Eldians are seen by effectively the rest of the world. So he's kind of like, will there be happiness if we sort of defeat all of our enemies? And I think that's what the rumbling he feels will accomplish. That peace to him is defeating his enemies so that he and his people can be free. I guess that's his goal. We'll see how they justify, and go ahead with sort of the character who's been the main character wanting to kill like 90% of the population. That's going to be very, very interesting if that is in fact the way they go with it. But there's no way they've talked about the rumbling so much in part 1, and it's not actually going to happen. The other thing, obviously, is the opening clearly shows that. I think the opening is called Rumbling or something like that as well, so it's going to happen. We basically know that. Beyond that, other things that happened, Falco, Zeke does do his roar, so we see a lot of the military people get turned into Titans, including Falco. But Falco does eat the Jaws Titan, so Falco's going to be the new Jaws Titan. We haven't seen him, the resolution to that. We just saw him actually, eat the nape of the neck. We haven't seen the net result of that. So that's interesting. And that fits because I think in some of the very early episodes of season 4, they were teasing the idea that, like, almost like through a paths connection, Falco had some sense that he was going to be a Titan someday or something like that. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember talking specifically about, they seem to be setting up that Falco might become a Titan. And obviously they were maybe setting up he might be the Armored Titan, but instead he's now the Jaws Titan. So that's quite interesting. Beyond that, I think that's about everything I want to say about these episodes. Obviously, a lot of the other stuff is just stuff that, like, I don't know what's going to happen, and we can discuss as we go through with individual episodes going forward. I'll just briefly end by just acknowledging that, obviously, in the gap between part 1 and part 2, the Attack on Titan manga did come to an end. Now, I haven't read the manga, I don't know what happens at the end, but it was impossible, I think, during the time period, in those weeks when it ended, to have not seen some of the reaction, I think, as an Attack on Titan fan, to how the series actually ended in its original content. And what I saw was a very, very mixed reaction, leaning more towards the negativity side of things, in that I didn't see a lot of people, like, wildly happy about the way it ended. I saw a lot of people kind of being like, it's an acceptable ending. I can bring myself to accept this ending, but a lot of people being very much on the wow, they blew it at the last minute. And so that's something I had a sense that that could happen because of the way the plot is going. And I think I talked about this throughout a lot of my part 1 for season 4 reviews, that the plot point of basically building up until very late in the game, revealing Eren's true motivations and goals and what exactly is going on. If you don't nail that reveal, the core of your series doesn't have anything if you don't get that right. And previously, Attack on Titan has done it correctly. Like the basement reveal went on for so long, but it fully delivered. One of the better reveals I've ever seen in fiction. So there's some confidence there, but just with some of the stuff they're doing here, with the introduction of time travel here, as they're slowly beginning to get towards, why Eren's doing what he's doing, I'm definitely having some doubts about, will they do it right here? Because I think a lot of it is based around Eren more so than anything else, and the fact that you've put it all on, we will wait until right at the end to reveal the main character's motivations. You need to get that right, and I have a feeling that that's probably where it has maybe slightly gone wrong, and it might relate in some way to some of the complexities with time travel paths and so on that they have introduced here, because you've now introduced the idea that like Eren has seen the future. When he kissed Asoria's hand, that's where it all changed for him. How far into the future has he seen? If Grisha can see that Eren causes a terror in the future, I guess Eren knows that he causes a terror in the future. So is what he's doing trying to avoid that? Is he trying to change the future? Is he locked into that future? Does he agree with that and want to make that happen? Or what? That's the question at its core that I have, of like, what is he actually trying to do? Because what I said earlier, that like he might want to wipe out the rest of the world, but I assume he would still maybe want to get rid of Titans if he could. So is there any plan there? Why is he then pushing away his friends rather than revealing his plan to them and trying to go ahead with things? Obviously the others are a bit more reasonable in terms of like they are open to actually like peace treaties, I suppose, with the other nations, whereas I don't think Eren is. But there's a lot of complexities like that going on. So they're my thoughts on Attack on Titan Season 4 Part 2, the first 4 episodes. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.